After I posted my previous video, many viewers were grateful for the research I've done, but some reactions surprised me. Without a single piece of counter-evidence, I was accused of misinformation, defamation, and even pressured to take down the video. I will not be taking it down, instead I made a more detailed one. The first video names 3 closely affiliated organizations. New Israel Fund funds BDS initiatives and opposes the redefinition of antisemitism. UnXeptable, an organization that marched in Washington alongside Israel's enemies, and JSpaceCanada that calls for sanctions and supports arms embargo against Israel. Its recently former board member is David Burson. David Burson accuses Israel of carnage in Gaza, ethnic cleansing, prevention of humanitarian aid, starving, killing innocent people, and mass killing. He is no longer on their board, but he continues to repost JSpaceCanada content. For example, a post about the executive director of JSpaceCanada, Maytal Kowalski. In an earlier interview, Kowalski stated she is a member of UnXeptable and is affiliated with New Israel Fund. She used to be employed by the Jewish Federation of Vancouver, but she continuously let her anti-Israeli government activism interfere with her work, and as a consequence was fired in early 2023. In November 2024, Kowalski testified in Canadian Parliament, calling for unilateral recognition of a Palestinian state. She advocates to pressure Israel and to strengthen the Palestinian Authority, the very authority that pays stipends to murderous terrorists in Israeli prisons, including ones that perpetrated the October 7 massacre. David Burson also posts events by the following organizations: Peace Now, Standing Together, or Omdim Beyachad in Hebrew, and Ameinu. Coincidentally, he is the chair of the board of Ameinu Canada. Ameinu is unhappy about Sinwar's elimination, blames the occupation for all grievances, and accuses Israel of warmongering. Ameinu reposts a tweet by the executive director of New Israel Fund where he expresses support for Nakba Day. Nakba means catastrophe, implying that the founding of Israel was a catastrophe for the Palestinian Arabs. Nakba is a term used by anti-Israel activists to delegitimize Israel and to justify calls for Israel's destruction. Ameinu promotes unacceptable events, is aligned with JSpaceCanada, and partners with Third Narrative. Ameinu, JSpaceCanada, New Israel Fund, together with Peace Now, regularly issue common statements and repost each other. Occasionally, Ameinu tags breaking the silence in their tweets. Ameinu promotes events by standing together and an organization called Mitvim. Wow, that's a lot of names. Let's explore them one by one. Peace Now and the Canadian Friends of Peace Now, together with Ameinu, they co-sponsored an event that featured New Israel Fund Executive Director as speaker. They also work closely together with JSpaceCanada. Years before October 7, together with JSpace and New Israel Fund, Canadian Friends of Peace Now continuously fought against Jewish National Fund Canada, one of the oldest Jewish charities in Canada. JNF plants trees, preserves nature, and builds bomb shelters in Israel. I don't know if JSpace, New Israel Fund, and Canadian Friends of Peace Now Advocacy played a role, but JNF recently lost its charitable status to the great glee of Samidun and IJV. In their more recent advocacy, Canadian Friends of Peace Now support UNRWA, an organization that is complicit with Hamas, celebrated October 7, and employs over 1,000 Hamas members, some of whom actively participated in the October 7 massacre. Canadian Friends of Peace Now also support the ICC arrest warrant that equates Israeli democratically elected government officials with the murderous Hamas leaders. Another organization is Mitvim. Their CEO, Gil Marciano, speaks at events by and with New Israel Fund and Peace Now. The Mitvim CEO is honored to be named a peacemaker by Heather McPherson, the Canadian NDP Member of Parliament. NDP is one of the more anti-Semitic parties in Canada, and Heather McPherson stands out even within her own party. In March 2024, it was her who proposed the anti-Israel motion that quoted Hamas propaganda verbatim and called to impose arms embargo against Israel. McPherson accuses Israel of genocide, calls for sanctions against Israel, and opposes the ban of UNRWA despite their proven ties to Hamas. According to the Mitvim CEO, this is the politician he is honored to be recognized by. Mitvim is funded by New Israel Fund. Another organization funded by New Israel Fund is Standing Together. I already mentioned that Standing Together is affiliated with Ameinu. Standing Together, together with Mitvim, hold events supported by New Israel Fund and JSpaceCanada. Standing Together promotes a ceasefire petition and rallies to end the war and occupation. Their rally poster does not call to release the hostages as if they want to end the war unconditionally. Standing Together leaders call themselves the Secretariat. One is a lonely green who accuses Israel of systemic killing, starving, bombing entire cities, and ethnically cleansing Gaza. Another is Uri Weltman. He supports the arms embargo against Israel. None of them is critical of Hamas or other Palestinian terrorist organizations whatsoever. Uri Weltman, together with Gil Murciano from Mitvim, spoke at a New Israel Fund-sponsored event hosted in Temple Shalom Synagogue in Vancouver. I would appreciate a comment from the Temple Shalom rabbis and board. Do they support sanctions and arms embargo against Israel? If they don't, why would they host speakers that do? Another Standing Together speaker is Rotem Levin. He calls Israel an apartheid regime and promotes an event with Daniel Mate, son of Gabor Mate, both infamous antisemites. Rotem Levin also declares that the very founding of Israel equates to ethnic cleansing of Palestinians, and any Zionist government is an apartheid government. He marks his location as occupied Palestine and calls for the end of Zionism. Can we agree that calling for the end of Zionism is anti-Zionist and anti-Israel? Standing Together holds protests together with an organization called the Third Narrative. Their posters are indistinguishable from ones of anti-Israel groups, calling to end the occupation, let Gaza live, and calls for a ceasefire. No mention of Hamas. Third Narrative supports J Street, who call for arms embargo. Third Narrative opposes the IRA definition of antisemitism. Third Narrative promotes the right of return. Right of return is the right of any descendant of any 1948 Palestinian Arab refugee to come to Israel and kick Israelis out of their homes. October 7 was a preview of such return. On the Third Narrative website, they reason that, in theory, Zionism wasn't necessarily racist, but Israel fundamentally is, that BDS is a legitimate way to fight against occupation, but foreign interference and advocacy for arms embargo are reasonable alternatives. Third Narrative references Norman Finkelstein, one of the most vocal haters of Israel, and they promote Rashid Khalid's The 100 Years' War on Palestine. This book is one of the most fundamental tools of anti-Israel propaganda. The article casually retains the idea of an alternative one state that will replace Israel. Third Narrative is affiliated with Ameinu. It's featured as a partner on Ameinu website and referenced at the top description of Ameinu Twitter account. Third Narrative often reposts Ameinu content. All these groups, UnXeptable, JSpaceCanada, New Israel Fund, Ameinu, J Street, Canadian Friends of Peace Now, Mitvim, Standing Together, Third Narrative, are tightly linked with each other. They share members and hold joint events. Mitvim and Standing Together are funded by New Israel Fund. I don't know about the rest. Additional organization funded by New Israel Fund is Breaking the Silence, Shobrim Shtika. Breaking the Silence is dedicated solely to smearing Israel. They promote all popular libels, apartheid, war crimes, violation of international law. They don't hold Hamas accountable for anything, but quote Hamas numbers unquestioned. They support BDS and oppose the IRA definition of antisemitism. Breaking the Silence Senior Director reposts content by Standing Together leader and Peace Now. Ameinu, Peace Now, and JSpaceCanada express support for Breaking the Silence. This web of organizations and individuals is truly endless, and their various ongoing collaborations demonstrate that their ties are not incidental. These organizations and individuals share values and goals. Every social media post or article I presented is aligned with the rest of their public presence. All links are available in the description of the video. I am often told that my research may harm unity. Unity is important, but it is even more important who you build this unity with. Some Israel's strongest supporters are non-Jewish. Some of our enemies are Jewish. Some are openly hostile and some are hostile in disguise. Earlier, I was criticized for naming specific individuals. To this I will say, if you think that publicity about their activism hurts their reputation, it is not the publicity that is the problem, it is the activism. I believe in freedom of speech and expression. It is their right to call for arms embargo, support boycott and sanctions, and oppose the IRA definition of anti-Semitism. But it is also my right to say that this activism delegitimizes the state of Israel and hurts Israel's safety. We can disagree on liking or disliking the Israeli government, but if hating the government leads someone to call for an arms embargo and to support BDS, we should have the moral courage to admit that they are hostile and help our enemies. And it is time for the leaders of the Jewish institutions to speak up and make their position on this clear. Israel is being attacked by the Islamic regime and its endless proxies. The Jewish diaspora is facing an unprecedented in modern times rise of anti-Semitism in Canada and worldwide. At times like this, it is crucial to know who our friends and who our enemies are. Am Israel Chai.